Many of you may know that tonight is our budget public hearing, and this will be the second time that we are beginning a process called E-Town Hall meeting. We conducted our first E-Town Hall meeting to provide an opportunity for people who don't normally attend city council meetings a chance to weigh in on budget decisions and to interact with council members, city council members. These are very important decisions that determine how your tax dollars are spent on city services and programs. For residents at home, some of you have already submitted your questions via email, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, and we want to thank you for that. For those in the audience, you may submit your questions on the blue card on the table that's near the clerk, over to the left. The staff will collect the cards with your questions and give them to tonight's moderator. Since this is a public hearing, for those of you who don't have a question but have a comment about the budget, you will still have an opportunity to comment following the E-Town Hall meeting, which hopefully will wrap up about 8:30. You simply complete the yellow card as usual if you have a comment for public hearings. Again, at the end of E-Town Hall, I will conduct the public hearing, which will be conducted as we normally do with public hearings. Now I'd like to introduce and welcome tonight's moderator, Ken Smith, who is an anchor and reporter for WRAL-TV, and Ken will explain more about how E-Town Hall will work. Ken.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, everybody. Thanks for being here tonight for the second E-Town Hall meeting. I'm Ken Smith with WRAL-TV and Fox 50. Joining me, Mayor William Bell, Mayor Pro Tem Cora Cole McFadden, Council Members Eugene Brown, Don Moffitt, Eddie Davis, Steve Schruel. Councilmember Diane Katati could not be with us tonight. City Manager Tom Bonfield presented the proposed 2014-15 budget to the City Council at the May 19th City Council meeting. After that, the city opened the cyber doors via email, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube to begin taking questions about what you'd like to see included in next year's budget. Tonight's E-Town Hall is part of the public hearing process to give you at home, as well as in the audience, a chance to get your questions answered. Over the past few weeks, the city has heard from several residents about what's proposed in this year's budget, from repaving streets to making repairs to parks, and as well as fees that are charged for things like water. Now, tonight we'll hear from city council members as they provide answers to your questions and hear your concerns before adopting the final budget on June 16th. As Durham and indeed the entire country slowly emerge from the recession, the city still faces challenges to ensure that there are enough revenues to cover expenses. In other words, making sure that there's enough money to pay for everything that the city needs. That's where you, City Council, and the city administration work together to make those tough decisions to meet citywide needs. Now, clearly, resources are limited. Now, City Council wants to hear and answer your questions and concerns to make sure resources are used the way you want them to be used. So, that brings us to our first issue. And before we ask that first question, we have a 9-second video that we'd like to show you concerning the issue of sidewalks.
Do you need a hand?
All right, that video demonstrates the issue that we're about to talk about, which has to do with sidewalks. Now, this question reads, I and my family have tripped many times on the unsafe and badly broken sidewalks, which are in desperate need of repair in front of our home. There's also no way that handicapped people in wheelchairs or in crutches or in walkers can get down our street because the sidewalk is in pieces. I asked the City Council to increase funds to repair sidewalks more quickly. I hope the City Council agrees that waiting years to repair this and provide safe access is too long and that something must be done to repair our sidewalks. Now, how can we get a sidewalk along the edge of Eno Trace between Shadebush and Lazy River on Infinity Road built? Is there money set aside to increase the number of sidewalks in the Durham area in general? Mr. Moffitt, get us started, if you will.
Well, not to be glib, there's never enough money. We have, along with sidewalks, of course, there's you could point to streets and street paving, new sidewalk construction, new street paving, just in those two areas right there. There's a lot of need. And as you started out by saying, it's the hardest task that we have as a council is to balance the services that the city provides with the revenues that we raise. Nobody wants to see their taxes go up, and nobody wants services cut. So we're always looking for how to balance that. Right now, we have $100,000 in the budget for sidewalk repair, but it wouldn't even begin to cover all of the sidewalks in the city. It's going to take a long time for us to get the city into a place where people don't find problems with the sidewalks on a regular basis.
And interestingly enough that you mentioned the $100,000 because the email also mentions the $100,000 set aside. They're asking to increase that to $200,000 a year, and you mentioned, funds are limited. Can that happen?
There are a couple of ways that could happen. There is, I don't know how much extra we have in the fund balance. Right now, I'd have to look to our finance director for that number, but as a one-time expense, we can't do ongoing expenses from the general fund, the unreserved balance, but we could look there. But we certainly have a number of demands that are similar to that, a number of requests of people asking for things that are important to them. We could also do it by raising taxes, and we can do it by cutting other services. But those are just broad stroke, very difficult to actually go in, and there's no spare $100,000 in the budget right now. I mean, every dollar is accounted for.
Thank you, Mr. Moffitt. We appreciate it. Our next topic, streets. We move from sidewalks to streets. Bumpy streets, this email reads, are still an issue in Durham. How is the city addressing the need to fix bumpy streets and potholes in the city? Mayor Bell.
Well, there is a number that people can call. It's 560-1200. And we know that there are many potholes throughout the city. We try to address them as soon as possible when they're identified. And I would suggest if you know of a street that has a pothole or you consider to be bumpy, if you would call that number, then someone will be able to address it in terms of being able to take care of it.
And council members, feel free to jump in on any of these topics, if you will. When I call out the mayor or any other council members, it's just to give them an opportunity to get the conversation started, but feel free to jump in anytime. All right.
Yes.
Mr. Brown.
Yes, thank you. Let me add a couple of points. One, and picking up too on what my colleague said, every budget session, I tend to remind us, and they know this, that you begin with the premise in city government that we have more needs than revenues. It's very simple. More needs than revenues. Every budget session, and I've been here for 10 now. So then the question becomes, and it is, as Don says, a very difficult one of priorities. Where do you place your priorities? So that's our challenge. Secondly, getting back to the question about roads, and this is unfortunately what the public does not understand quite often, and that is we have both city roads, and it's almost a euphemism now to say state-maintained roads. I say state roads because they're not very well maintained by our state, even though that's their responsibility, not ours. And they're the main streets, and quite often that's where we get most of the protest calls concerning bumpy streets or potholes or whatever. Not always. Some of them are ours. There's no question about that. But the public sees a street as a street, doesn't see it as a city street versus a state street. So that adds to the complexity of the issue. And then my last point is sidewalks. And I think we are sidewalk poor in Durham. There's a deficiency here. And I'm just going to confess, part of this is my responsibility, because when we passed I think it was a $20 million street improvement, 4 years ago, 3 years ago? 2010. What we should have done at the time, and it's always easier, of course, to look back, but we should have designated a certain percentage of that street bond for sidewalks. 5%, 10% or whatever. We didn't do that. And we would have been better off now if we would have done that. Because sidewalks connect neighborhoods, they connect people. Walkability is one of the key things that people are looking for now, much more so than they were even certainly 10 or 15 or 20 years ago. So,
Thanks. Mr. Brown, thank you. And that actually leads us to our next issue in terms of people getting around, and it has to do with traffic safety improvements and more specifically bike lanes. This email comes to us and says, my primary objective is to add one more voice to requests for more adequate funding for traffic safety improvements for pedestrians and cyclists. As a family, we conduct the majority of our errands by bicycle, which is indeed possible in Durham. Now, those locations where adequate infrastructure like sidewalks and traffic lights are absent, bike riding with children can become life-threatening in any case. Now, basically, here's what this emailer wants to know. There are critical gaps between sidewalks, as you just mentioned, Mr. Brown, critical gaps between ramps, missing pedestrian lights, and lights that do not switch automatically. How do we solve this problem in the budget? Can funding for other seemingly less important areas be reduced? And I might point out that this email says, for example, in terms of taking away money from the public affairs government television on which we're broadcasting tonight. I'm not sure how much possible that is, but question being, is there money in the budget? Can we make that happen, Mr. Brown? I'm coming at you again.
I think we've made some progress with bike lanes. And certainly part of our focus too has been on trails like the American Tobacco Trail, the bridge going over I-40, and so on. We've made progress on Main Street in front of East Campus, where that entire area was redone, and it took almost a year to do it, but now there's a designated bike trail. Cameron Road, Maureen Road, Hillendale, plans are underway to see what can be done on those three main arteries. But again, state versus local streets, we can't simply demand that a bike lane be added to a state street. I mean, then you got to go to the General Assembly and go to the Department of Transportation. You might as well be dealing with the Pentagon. It's very, very difficult. Do we need to do more? Yes. Are we doing more? Yes. Is it enough? Probably not. So it should rise, I hope, with all my colleagues, to a higher scale of
It's interesting you should say that because a lot of neighbors look at the street and say, hey, this is a Durham street, but in actuality, some of the streets aren't Durham streets, they're state streets, and like you just pointed out, there are protocols to follow in terms of bringing bike lanes to state streets.
Yes.
See, you learn something at these meetings all the time.
Ken, let me just add to Councilman Brown's comments, and I've been reminded that in terms of what the city is doing locally and trying to maintain its own streets, we did increase our budget from $750,000 to $1 million in terms of street resurfacing and paving. So that's another piece that the city is undertaking to try to meet that effort.
Right. Mayor, thanks. Mr. Brown, thank you too. Public safety. This emailer is concerned about the press, the media, reported an increase in crime this year, according to the police department, it is mostly, quote, retaliatory crime and not related to other crime. When I have a conversation with staff in neighborhood improvement services, we agree that blighted properties often lead to negative outcomes pertaining to public safety. With that in mind, does the amount of property tax allocated for public safety need to be increased to keep the city safe? Mayor Bell.
Well, public safety is a combination of not just police department, but fire department, et cetera. But I assume that people are focusing more on the police department. Presently, our police department is staffed at its level this is required that they're asking for in terms of sworn officers. So in terms of the number of police that are sworn officers on the staff, we're at the level, and we're funding them at that level. Can you always use more money? Sure you can. But in terms of trying to improve public safety, I constantly remind others that it's not just a law enforcement piece alone. It has to have the community involvement, and we're trying to include that as a part of the effort as we try to increase public safety. But specifically, we're funding the police department in terms of sworn officers at the level that they've requested.
As council members, and as you make your way through many of the Durham communities, are you finding that neighbors are getting more involved in terms of keeping their neighborhood safe?
Well, let me say this. It's interesting you raise that question because I just participated, as did a number of my council members this past weekend, at a town hall meeting in Northeast Central Durham. And after that meeting was concluded, I just happened to walk out and I saw some person sitting on their porch. And I went over and introduced myself to them to try to get a sense of how they felt the neighborhood. And this was on Drive Avenue. And asked them, did they feel more comfortable in the neighborhood? Did they see some improvements? And to a person, there were about 6 persons sitting on the porch. And I said, the fact that you're sitting on your porch says something to me. She said, you're right, because maybe a year or so ago we wouldn't have been sitting here. But their answer is, yes, they do find that getting involved can make a difference. In fact, after we finished the conversation, we took them back across the street to the town hall meeting to introduce them to some of the leaders to make sure that they were a part of the group that's going to be involved. So I think community involvement plays a big part and will continue to play a big part in terms of improving public safety in our neighborhoods.
Ms. McFadden, you...
Yeah, and I know that Neighborhood Improvement Services will be promoting, bringing more citizens into our PACs. But that's because that's where a lot of our preventive activity is held. This is something that I believe Ms. Stansel said at one of our recent meetings.
Mr. Davis?
Mr. Smith, thank you. As a new member of the council, I've been very impressed with the number of neighborhood groups that have invited me and my colleagues to different events that they've held, which show that people are rallying around their own neighborhoods and the multiple neighborhoods in Durham. So I think to help to answer your question, yes, many more people are doing that, and that is during the spring. I expect that there will be even more such activities as we go through the summer, leading into and up to the National Night Out program that will be held in August.
Okay. All right, thank you. Appreciate that. Solid waste, the possibility of a reduction of recycling due to position elimination, of course, eliminating positions or jobs. This email comes into us. Now that the waste reduction coordinator position has been eliminated, how does the city intend to coordinate local government agencies and community groups who are working on positive impact waste reduction initiatives in Durham? And now that the environmental economic evidence base demonstrates that waste reduction pays for itself, how does the city justify removing the waste reduction coordinator position as a budget cut? Mr. Davis.
Well, we listened to the proposal that came from the Solid Waste Department and talked about that reduction of that position. I think we are looking very closely at the idea that there will be many more groups, voluntary groups, as well as agencies that will be working proactively to try to make sure that there is a heavier emphasis on recycling, and that we can indeed absorb the reduction of that position by having many more people in a community action method to try to make sure that we indeed do involve more people. And also that there will be many more efficiencies within the solid waste department that will allow for that work to be done by others in the department.
And of course, neighbors will have a suggestion on how you can work this out. And this email says, why not reduce 401k for employees rather than eliminate positions in solid waste?
Well, I think that certainly would be many ways that we could do things. We could reduce salaries. I mean, we certainly don't want to go in that direction. We certainly want to be a good employer. We want to make sure that we give our employees the same kinds of wages and benefits that they would obtain if they were in the private sector. And we certainly want to make sure that these benefits are there for them as they do the great work that they do for the city of Durham.
And one more note about solid waste. This emailer wants to know, can you clarify what it means for code enforcement to be done on, quote, on a reactive basis?
Well, I just had a conversation with the city manager as we came in, and we have been looking at trying to make sure that we look at different neighborhoods and different ways that we might be able to enforce the codes. We're hoping that we can have a proactive method that might include Keep Durham Beautiful and other agencies and neighborhoods to see if we can be more proactive rather than reactive, so that code enforcement will come from the eyes and ears that we will have throughout the community from different agencies and communities.
All right, Ms. Davis, thank you. Parks and Recreation is the next topic, and of course, I want to point out the half-cent on the tax rate was discussed at a budget meeting last week to support maintenance issues and repairs at city parks and facilities. To that end, this email comes in to us, and it reads, I am writing in support of increased funding for city parks maintenance in this year's budget, even if it means a tax increase to pay for it. I would also like to express my support for the development of a multi-field sports complex for sports such as soccer and lacrosse. This lack of fields not only costs Durham visitors dollars, it also results in the overuse of both city fields and Durham Public Schools fields. Please address this issue. Mr. Schul.
Thank you very much for the question. It's a great question. Excuse me, it's always nice to get support for something that the council's planning to do. So it's great to get that email. I would say a couple of things about parks in this budget. First of all, there are two ways in which I think we're really going to improve what we see in our parks. And the first is that we haven't passed this yet, but there's a lot of support on the council for adding a half-cent, or about $1.2 million, in funding parks and recreation to address parks and trail maintenance. And this would be allocated towards hiring staff who would mow, who would fix all the little broken fences, who would paint all the basketball goals that are unpainted, who would fix up all the many broken things in our parks, resurface fields, make fields green that are brown and don't have any grass anymore, all the kinds of maintenance that we need so badly in our parks. We have, I believe now, 58 parks in Durham, and it just is a tremendous job to keep them well maintained. The same way, it's an infrastructure question. The same way we need to maintain the infrastructure of our streets and our sidewalks, the same is true of our parks. We have thousands of people using our parks, and they've got to be in great shape. The other way in which I think we're really including some really good things for our parks in this budget, Ken, is through our capital improvement plan. We have about $4 million earmarked for parks in this plan, and there are things that people have been wanting in some cases for a long time, and then some just important needs that we have. For example, we need to the Americans for Disability Act calls for us to comply with certain things in parks in terms of access and so forth. And so we're going to be spending about $350,000 this year in Valley Springs and West Point on the for that kind of thing. If you've ever been to Twin Lakes Soccer Park, which is one field, it's a AstroTurf field. It is rented 362 days a year. That's how popular this park is. And of course, it's been played into oblivion. The surface is no good. There's problems with the fence. And this, we have $400,000 in the budget to resurface that field so we can keep it playable. We've got $1.5 million for West Ellerby Creek Trail, which is a really important trail in West Durham that many people want. We have so much in the budget for parks. $900,000 for resurfacing Herndon Park, which will make that park playable many more days of the year. So we're doing a lot for parks. In terms of the athletic complex, I'm in favor of an athletic complex, and I think many of us would love to see it. I think we need a park, another park besides Herndon Park south of I-40 where everything's happening and growth. But my colleague Gene Brown and the mayor and Don have all talked about the fact that there are trade-offs all the time. So what we're doing first with parks is we're renovating and fixing up what we've got, and hopefully we'll be able to do some of the new things in the future.
And staying with the whole idea of infrastructure, this next email comes to us about pools around the community, and we should point out that is a pool study going around underway that examines the placement of pools throughout the city. And this emailer wants to know, is there funding for a Walltown swimming pool?
So, yeah, thank you for that question as well. Great question. We do have a swimming pool study that's going on now. I think many of the people in the public know that Longmeadow Park Pool is closed for this summer because of maintenance issues. It's a dangerous situation with water in the electrical room there. And so we've got a swimming pool study going on. It's going to take into consideration all the locations of our pools. A new pool is very expensive. It's going to cost $10 million. So again, it's not something to be undertaken lightly, but we're going to study where pools are needed. We're going to study what we need to do to make sure that our existing pools are well maintained, and we'll be able to, I think when that park study comes, we'll be able to give a pool study comes, we'll be able to give a better answer.
Right, sure, thanks. Planning, that's the next issue we're talking about.
Let me, Ken.
Yeah,
If I
go
may
ahead.
add to that, because my colleague pointed out a good point in terms of the Long Meadow pool. I think that's really tragic that that's not going to be open this swimming season. Of all the places in Durham that really need a public pool, that's one of them. And I don't think we're going to have a pool realistically at Walltown. We just spent close to $10 million there on the facility. I'd like to see it utilized more often than it is. But we need to take care, first and foremost, of what we already have. And pools are very expensive, and that Long Meadow pool is absolutely crucial for the young people of Durham, particularly those in northeast central Durham.
And the reason it's not going to be viable this summer?
Well, believe it or not, we've spent a lot of money there. It's a question of hydrostatic water coming in through the walls into the electrical room, which is located below ground. We now have yet another analysis looking into it, but it needs attention in terms of the safety of the workers who are there. And I'm really sorry that we could not at least go one more summer using that pool. But
Well, I've got to tell you, when it comes to pools and electrical situations, we've done a number of stories in the last month of children being electrocuted or almost electrocuted as a result of electrical wirings around pools. So that is a concern, and that should be taken care of before anything happens. All right, planning. And this has to do with staffing. How does a citizen ensure their planning needs are prioritized in the planning work plan? I have been waiting over 3 years for a study to be done on my neighborhood's local historic district designation. Each year it is not included because there's not enough staff, but the planning department feels they don't need any extra staff. Help me understand in bold. Mr. Moffett.
So one of the things that we do, we're a very democratic city. And people can come to our council meetings. It doesn't matter if an item's on for public hearing or not. If someone wants to speak on it, they can sign up to speak. And it's a very open city. And one of the things that we do is we say, look, if you want something, and if you want a sidewalk, if you want a street paved, you do a petition, and then bring it to us, and we'll make it happen. And the answer is yes, that's going to happen, but it's probably not going to happen as quickly as you think it will. And we have a long list of sidewalks. We have a long list of streets that people have requested. And we also have 2 local historic districts that people have requested that be developed and brought to council for consideration. One of those is in the Cleveland-Holloway area. The other one is in the Golden Belt area. The Cleveland-Holloway one, the staff has told us that they believe that they will have that to council within the next 12 months. And of course, one of their challenges is that they need to bring, what we want them to do is to bring us a plan that has broad community support. And that's not as simple as simply drawing boundaries. The second thing that's going on, that they're working on in that area, the planning department, is that there's districts all over the city, but each one has slightly different rules. So they're trying to do a consolidated set of rules so that it's simplified for the staff, for the Historic Preservation Commission, and for the districts themselves. It's easier to understand. And so they're trying to get these rules finished, then bring Cleveland-Holloway forward, and then work on Golden Belt. And we're looking at that. We're trying to figure out if there's a way that we can help on a one-time basis to move these 2 historic districts to completion this year, and we're going to do our best.
So to this emailer's point, there is adequate staff.
It's like everything else. The planning department has a very long list of things that they want to accomplish that we want them to accomplish. And so they don't have enough staff. It's what my colleague, Councilman Brown, was saying at the beginning. There's always more needs than there is the funding to pay for those needs. The question is always, where down that list do we stop this year, and how much are we going to spend to get to that point? And so they have enough, if we look at them, we divide them into the critical issues and the important issues. They have enough to deal with the critical issues and hopefully some of the important issues, but not enough to get everything on the list done this year.
Ms. McFadden, please proceed.
In defense of planning, a lot of what happens, and I understand that he does have adequate staff because he said it over and over. There is a layer of decision-making in the whole process, I think, that holds up progress, and staff has to spend an inordinate amount of time on that layer, and that's something that I'm hoping the city and county managers will be talking about very soon. I'm not going to call the name of that layer. I'm on it.
All right. Thank you, Ms. McFadden. Appreciate that. All right. Mayor Bell, you've made it known about your poverty initiative, and this emailer wants to know, they understand the need to address poverty throughout the city. How is the city funding that initiative?
Again, I assume that the writer is speaking about the joint effort between the City Council, Durham Board of County Commissioners, and the Durham Public Schools to reduce poverty neighborhood by neighborhood, year by year, starting in 2014. And we started this process first by saying we aren't speaking about adding more money to what's already been spent. I'm not saying that somewhere down the line those things might change, but it isn't a matter of trying to find more dollars. It's trying to make more effective use of the dollars that we're already putting into those areas. And towards that end, we've defined 6 areas that we're focusing on: health, education, public safety, housing, jobs, and finance. Some of those are under the purview of the city, some under the purview of the county, some under the purview of the Durham Public Schools. So let me speak specifically to the city schools, to the city council. Public safety, housing, and to a certain extent, jobs are pretty much what the city council is involved in. And to that end, what we're trying to do is to focus on those areas through task force to come up with ways we can improve that. In terms of poverty in general, we are really focused on those areas already. If you look at what's happening in certain parts of our city in terms of housing, If you look at the fact that we're spending a lot of times focusing on crime in those neighborhoods that have experienced larger disease of crime than others, we're doing that. If you look at housing, our neighborhood improvement services is working to deal with code enforcement to make sure we have houses that's meeting the codes of our city. So we're doing those things. All those things, to me, are underlying issues related to poverty. But specifically, we've chosen a particular part of the city, Northeast Central Durham, a particular section of Northeast Central Durham, that we are beginning to focus on this program of reducing poverty neighborhood by neighborhood, year by year, 2014, and we define the neighborhoods that we're working in.
Because what happens there can be a blueprint for what you can do elsewhere.
Exactly, and that's what we're hoping. And what I've said over and over again, even though we're focusing on these specific neighborhoods, it doesn't mean that other neighborhoods might benefit from some of the things that we find out that will spill over into other neighborhoods. So while we're focused on these neighborhoods, it doesn't mean that the boundary line says that other neighborhoods couldn't be doing some of the same things that we are going to be coming up with. But this is a long-term project, and I think it's important for people to realize that.
Sure, and if I may, this email had talked about funding, but it isn't always about funding when it comes to reducing poverty, is it?
It is not. It is not. If we spoke specifically about poverty, and that relates to income, the easiest way to fix it is go out and find all the people that are in poverty, that below incomes, find money, give it to them, and take them out of poverty. But that isn't the solution. The underlying causes which contribute to poverty are the things that we're looking at and trying to focus on. In some cases, it may mean more money, but we aren't starting off with the premises that we're going to put more money in it. We're first going to try to find out how can we improve those areas.
And changing the mindset. This next topic is...
Ken, could I make a comment on that as well?
Mr. Shule, feel free.
Thank you. I just wanted to say, the mayor has modestly said that this is an initiative of the city council and the county commission and school board. In a sense, it is. But I think I feel that the community owes him a debt of gratitude for putting this on the front burner. I think we all know that Durham is making incredible strides in many ways, but we also know, and we've all known, that there are a lot of people in Durham who do not share in that. And I think what the mayor has done is to say that to the whole city in his State of the City speech. He has rallied the troops. He's gotten the committees established. He's gotten our city staff involved. There's a process going on. People are coming to our committees. They're rallying to it. And I just want to say, I've seen other big projects that the mayor has started, and he pushed difficult, risky ones to merge our city and county schools, which we did successfully, and it was hard. The risk of building the DPAC, the South Side neighborhood, which I think is going to end up being a tremendous success, and all these are risks. And I think that the mayor has led. And while I appreciate his modesty on this, I think putting this in the foreground, putting this in the forefront of what we're trying to do here in Durham in a way that's in everybody's consciousness, that we're going to try to fight poverty here in Durham and that we have a strategy to do it, it isn't going to all work out perfectly. We've got kind of an unwieldy structure, and who knows how it's all going to go. But I can tell you that having it in the forefront of everybody's mind has already, I think, made a difference in the way people are thinking about focusing their resources. And so I just want to thank you, Mr. Mayor, and say I think it's already making a big difference.
Thank you, Mr. Shule.
Ken, I'm going to add to that, too, very briefly, which is that I want to just sort of describe for a moment so that people understand it's not just people getting together and talking about this. But of these 6 task forces, some of these are, for example, I work on the health task force, and I know the least among everybody who's on that. But they come together, and they've been working, like there's Partnership for Healthy Durham. So we're looking at it, we're trying to look at it in a different way. And to say, what is there some kind of disruptive technology, if you will, something that that's low cost, it's replicable, that we can replicate it across the city, and that it's scalable. But other of these task forces are people who are coming together for the first time and really beginning to think about how to deliver services in a different way. And so it's very exciting to me to see what's going on. And when we started this, I didn't really know where we were going. We still don't. It's one of our mottos is to embrace ambiguity. And like Councilman Shule said, I have the debt of gratitude and excitement about the discussions that are occurring already.
All right. Ms. Moffett, thanks.
Well, you know, I always
McFadden.
have to say something great about this great mayor. But one of the things that I'm excited about is the opportunity that this initiative will give us to actually to uncover and to confront the institutions that drive poverty in our community. And the same goes with homelessness. There are institutions, policies, practices that cause us to be where we are. And we need, when we see them, we need to make sure that we try to do something to eradicate them.
Thanks, Ms. McFadden, because I'm coming to you next. Because this issue is really important to me as well, because I do a lot of volunteer work with our church after-school program. So I recognize the importance of what we do to ensure that our children have choices. Because I don't advocate, like, just educate our children, but I really believe that what we do puts our children in a position to have choices and make those choices. What opportunities, this emailer wants to know, what opportunities are out there that the city might be providing to engage our youth?
And this one I'm very proud of, the establishment of our youth commission almost 10 years ago, 10 years ago, to advise us as elected officials on those kinds of issues that youth see as being important to them. So we have in place a group of young people who can actually share with us what they see as our needs. Now, they were sort of quiet this past fiscal year, so we've got to pump them up this coming fiscal year, because I know we have some vivacious youth coming on our youth council this year. But they, and as I look in the audience, I don't see any, maybe there are some, I don't see any youth in the audience. And that's sort of typical of what we see throughout the community. And I think that's why we probably lose so many youth, because they are not involved in their own planning. The other thing I know that we have that is probably most popular is the summer youth program. Summer Youth Employment Program. I think we received over 1,700 applicants this year, and we've interviewed, I know, close to 500 applicants, and they will be placed in parks and rec, some throughout City Hall, and with employers throughout the city. Now, what we need to do, and I will make this call, is to ask employers throughout the community to either hire or contribute money to the city so that we can hire our young people in positions. We cannot force employers to hire, but those of you who shop wherever can ask your merchants, do you hire young people? And if the answer is yes, keep shopping with them. If it is no, that will give you a few options. But anyway, it's very important that we shop with people who really care about our youth.
I always find that because I do so much work with young people, that it's so important to make sure that they are vested in the process. How can we encourage them to become vested in the process? Because we will try to pave the way, but how do we get them involved? How do we get them sitting out here? How do we get them knocking on those doors to find those jobs? How do we get them involved in the process?
Well, they are already involved. They're just not here tonight. But I do know that they've been involved in the interview process. They're aware of the jobs, and so they will be doing that. I am the advisor to our youth commission, so in the upcoming year, I will as I said, do whatever I can within my role as city council, not overstepping that boundary to make sure that they're pumped up and ready for action. What we tried to do is recruit young people who actually want to do some work and who will question us on stances that we take. And I know at least 3 that I've recruited who are just waiting for the opportunity to come before us and make their demands known. An example, please time me. Yeah, okay. An example is a few years ago, they said they wanted a teen center. And so we do have a teen center. That teen center is right across the street from the Lion Park Community Life Center. And I just hope that more teenagers in the ages, grades 9 through 12 will participate in that facility. It is awesome. They planned it, and they have some good programs going on there.
An example of teens and young people getting vested in the process. Mr. McFadden, thank you. I got to tell you that downtown Durham has come a long way. I moved here in 2000 and working for Capital Broadcasting, and I got to admit, I rarely came to Durham, but now I look forward to coming to Durham, in all honesty, because not only there are things to do, the DPAC and whatever else, but you've got a great food restaurant scene in Durham that I really like. Mayor, talk to us about downtown development and what's on the horizon.
Ken, you said it all, and I'm going to share this with my other colleagues on the council in response to this. There's no question that we made great progress in downtown revitalization. It's been through public-private partnerships that has made this happen, but I'm going to turn this over to Councilman Brown and let him further elaborate on this.
Mr. Brown?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I guess I can speak as a native of Durham, and growing up here, downtown, believe it or not, used to be called the City of Exciting Stores. The City of Exciting Stores. And people would come here from the entire area to shop. Obviously, that is no longer the case. But when I moved back to Durham after a 15-year hiatus period, downtown Durham was more than just a sleepy town. It was, at night, too, was a place to almost be avoided. And one of the goals that we recognized up front was that to breathe life back into any urban area, into a downtown area, you need citizens to live there. And so that is what is happening, and we're very pleased to see that going on. I think part of the question too related to parking, and will there be adequate parking for those who visit downtown? I think that's an exciting question to even ponder as one who has seen the transformation of this city, and especially our downtown. There are hotels going up.
I think I see here 4 new hotels.
Yeah, and by our planning rules and regulations, we require adequate parking for the guests. The vast majority of those will be overnight parking, so they will not necessarily interfere with people who want to come to downtown during the day and for the esteemed dining experience, as well as DPAC and the Durham Bulls list can be expanded. So I really don't see this. In some ways, I hope it does become a problem 4 or 5 years down the road, but I don't see that now as a major problem. We're just exceedingly excited about seeing what's going on here.
I know for citizens, me being a citizen, parking is always an issue, and I'm always concerned when the issues are focused on our visitors, which is fine, parking for the hotels and whatnot, but for everyday citizens coming downtown, being able to partake in the restaurant scene, the parking for them, what about that? Which, could be a problem.
Well, they may have to walk a block or two, and there's certainly nothing wrong with that. But see, this really goes back to the crux of the matter in terms of what we have done here, is the mayor alluded to with our public-private partnerships. Because if you're out in suburbia and you're building a parking space on open area, flat ground, that space will probably cost you anywhere from $2,500 up to $3,500. But in downtown, where land is scarce, you're going to pay 4 or 5 times more for that parking. So that's one of the driving elements of why we had the partnerships that we had to have. I mean, parking is no question about it. It's absolutely crucial. But I think we are addressing that issue. And again, I don't want to be redundant, but it's a great problem to have as a native of Durham and who's seen the positive transformation.
Mr. Brown, thank you. Mr. Shule and then Mr. Moffett.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to add one thing to that, which is that I think one of the things we want to do, and these are questions that you alluded to earlier, one of the ways we reduce the need for parking downtown is to increase the walkability of downtown, and so that and increase our bike lanes and improve our trails and add more trails so that people are coming to downtown in other ways and are traveling through downtown in other ways. And I think that we're going to be doing that. We have a, for example, the Belt Line is a railroad line that Norfolk Southern owns that goes through downtown Durham, and we have long coveted that as a possible trail. It's no longer used as a railroad line. And there's a lot of work in the city, both on the part of the government, our city government, and the part of private interests to try to figure out a way to make that happen. All those things can cut down on the need for parking. And then the other thing about parking is this. It goes back to, so the theme seems to me to be kind of the same in a lot of these questions, which is there are a lot of things we want, but we also don't really want to pay more. And so that's where this is constantly negotiated. And several of my colleagues have referred to this. But we could have unlimited parking if people wanted to pay for it in either tax dollars or parking fees. So we just have to figure that out in a way that is as wise as we can. And we're constantly kind of working on what that edge and that limit is. And the last thing I'd say is I'm sorry that you live in Raleigh. If you would like to come here to Durham, we would welcome you. There's lots of fabulous places to live here, lots of great neighborhoods to live here in Durham, Ken. So come on over anytime.
Thank you, sir, for the invitation. Mr. Moffett.
So Councilman Schul's exactly right, but I want to add a little bit. We have a lot of parking. We have a lot of going on downtown. A lot of people know this, but we've got many nights during the summer. There are baseball games. There are events at the Performing Arts Center. There's performances at the Carolina Theater. There are free music on many nights through an American Tobacco, at Brightleaf, at the CCB Plaza. And yet we have 3 decks at American Tobacco and 3 more decks around downtown, as well as surface parking lots. And even with all these events, it's very rare that any one of these decks is full. So there's plenty of parking. There's no excuse. And once you leave your car, the atmosphere downtown is great. It's a great place to walk and to promenade and to see all the other folks.
Thanks a lot. Mr. Brown, I saw your hand, or?
So I was just going to add a couple of things. I think some of you don't want to hear this, but eventually we're going to have parking meters in downtown Durham to help subsidize the very expensive renovating our current parking garages. We also have a free bus system now that we instigated about 3 years ago, which goes from Central and Duke to downtown Durham as well as to East Durham. And then I think Steve is right. If we can encourage more bikers to come to downtown, and perhaps have more parking for them in terms of bike racks. But I'm not saying motorcycles necessarily. They're on 9th Street, the left bank, as we call it. But anyway, I think Don is correct. Of all the problems we have, or challenges, I should say, that we have in Durham, finding a place to park is not very high on our list, because there usually is parking. And what's wrong with walking 2 or 3 blocks?
Well, there you go. Thank you, sir. Mayor Bell, I'm going to really quickly give you the last word tonight at the E-Town Hall meeting concerning this last question that came in about the Southside Development project, and what about other needs for the homeless?
Well, I think that's a great question also, and I think it's important for people to realize what's involved in the Southside project. Most people know it as Rolling Hills, Southside, and et cetera. What we wanted to do was to do something that would be transformative and on a larger scale. I mean, we did something very successfully over on Barnes Avenue, where we've got Eastway Village, Eastway Avenue, about 40 houses, affordable houses now. It was all low income, a lot of illegal activities going on, rental units, very, very few homeowners. And the city undertook to buy those 2 blocks up, buy the houses up, and now we have a very, very quality type development. We wanted to do the same thing over in Southside and Rolling Hills. We wanted to do something that would be transformative, not just for that particular piece of property, but the surrounding area. And I think we've seen that come about in terms of what's happening now on South Street. I think towards the end of this week, we'll have a sort of a ribbon cutting for the first homeowners in that area. So looking at Southside and looking at it in the context of just it, some people may think it's too much, but I think when you look at the quality product that's going to be there, not just for the people that live there, but for the city itself, it's something we're all going to be proud of. And when you look at, are we taking away from any other projects by doing this, such as the homeless? And my answer to that is no. We continue to fund those projects, and as we move from one phase, hopefully we'll be able to do more. But Southside needs to be looking at it in terms of what it will do for the city in that particular area. And I think hopefully by the end of the summer, certainly by January, it'll be a pride of joy for all the people, not people that just live there, but the city of Durham. You can see it now. It's sort of transforming the skyline as you come into the city. And it's going to be a quality project. Could you do it for less? Probably not. Do we want to spend less money? You always want to spend less money, but you want to have a quality product, and that's what we wanted to continue to do. It's a very difficult site to deal with. There's no question that the rain has really hurt us quite a bit. It's hurt a lot of construction projects, but it's going to be a quality project that's transformative that we can all be proud of.
All right. Mayor Bell, thank you. And thank you, everybody, for attending tonight's E-Town Hall meeting. It's been helpful to council to be able to address your concerns. If your questions were not answered, make sure to check the city's website, www.durhamnc.gov, durhamnc.gov. The council will be reviewing all questions, and suggestions and responses will be posted. Your continued involvement throughout the budget process is not only welcomed, but also encouraged. Stay connected via the city's Durham's Facebook page, Twitter page, and on the website. All resources, documents referenced tonight regarding the budget can also be found on the city's website. Once again, thank you for coming and for caring about your local government. I now turn the meeting back over to Mayor Bell.
Well, thank you, Ken, and we certainly want to applaud you and thank you for your participation in this effort.